But none of that explosive fallout this morning following a disturbing incident on a United Airlines plane where a passenger was forcefully dragged off an overbooked flight.
Pilots drive to Louisville? Can't they rent a car for the pilots and have them drive? Oh my God! Oh my God!
The Department of Transportation is now reviewing the incident, and one of the police officers involved is currently on administrative leave. All of this started when United couldn't find any volunteers to give up their seats so that crew members could travel from Chicago to Louisville on Sunday. The man in the video was randomly selected, although witnesses say he refused to leave, and that's when law enforcement was called in. United's CEO released the following statement, quote, "This is an upsetting event to all of us here at United. I apologize for having to reaccommodate these passengers. Our team is moving with a sense of urgency to work with authorities and conduct our own detailed review of what happened." Joining me, Airline Weekly Seth Kaplan, International President of the Association of Flight Attendants, Sara Nelson, and the Executive Director for the National Association of Airline Pilots, Doug Kidd. And I want to start by listening to what one witness on the flight told NBC News.
The passenger hit his head on the arm rest next to him, knocked him out. He got all bloody on his face.
All right, Doug, let me start with you. I apologize. The National Association of Airline Passengers.
That's right.
Executive Director. I asked you in the break, or someone here did, about what rights a flyer has under these circumstances, and you said basically none?
That's right. The airlines write the rules, and every time you click on the box to say that you agree to their terms when you buy a ticket, these are the rules that you agree to. Some 46 pages of fine print.
But does it say you can drag a passenger off a plane?
Well, no, it doesn't, but it does say that they can remove you or have you removed at any time during the flight the process, and pretty much for just about any reason, anything from government requisition up to the passenger smelling bad.
It's a okay.
Yeah.
If I'm another passenger, I might agree with that part of it, but I digress. Let me go to Seth. Have you ever seen anything like this? And, this is one of those stories, frankly, that everywhere you go, people are talking about it.
They are, and with good reason. And look, Chris, I generally, my starting point is places to be sympathetic with airlines. I understand what they go through. Even the process of having to occasionally involuntarily deny somebody boarding is, look, it exists for a reason. In this case, they're thinking, hey, we got to get that crew where they're going. Inconvenience one passenger to not inconvenience, hundreds of passengers that crew is supposed to be carrying later. I understand all that. But once this guy is boarded, sitting in his seat, that's a whole different story. And the idea that this sort of thing just happens all the time is not the case. Usually that would be happening in the gate area. They ask for volunteers, and usually they get them. Usually people are happy to be bumped because they have volunteered. They get to travel free in the future. Once in a while, there's an invol, as airlines call it, an involuntary denied boarding, but almost never does it end up like this. And, you just have to feel awful. I don't know how the airline's not looking at that guy and saying, hey, that's a customer of ours. And holistically, even if there are parts of what happened that, yes, you need to get somebody off the flight, holistically, it should not have ended that way.
And it's starting now this morning already. The markets have just opened, and United is already down 2.10%. So, Sara, they're taking a hit. And I'm going to just say I'm somebody who flies all the time. I don't think there's been hardly a week in the last couple of years where I haven't been on a plane, sometimes 6 or 8 of them a week. I sympathize, frankly, with some of what flight attendants, gate attendants have to go through. But in your mind, as somebody who understands what the rules and regulations and challenges are facing airline employees, how do you think this was handled?
Look, I think that we have to recognize that this was deeply disturbing. This was an event, as Seth said, that is unseen, unheard of. And I have talked with hundreds of crews since the incident and listened to many more. And across the board, no matter which airline they're speaking from, everyone finds this incident to be disturbing. Once the law enforcement was on board and calling the shots, that's when this escalated into the situation that it did. Certainly there were events leading up to that, but I think it's really important that we recognize that this was not airline employees who were involved in what became such an incredibly disturbing event. And so this is not something that's acceptable. We have to start there. But I think that we also have to recognize what all of you have been saying is that this is such an incredibly rare event. And as you said, Chris, flight attendants are challenged with de-escalating situations on the plane all the time, usually containing a problem that the rest of the passengers are very happy that we're working so hard to contain or even sometimes take off the airplane. So we have to have that kind of order in the cabin to make sure that this event doesn't define what aviation's first responders are doing every single day.
Yeah, let's hope not. And now we have people everywhere reacting to this. One of the funnier ones, I guess, if you're not the guy who's being dragged down the plane and getting bloodied, was from the Cleveland Browns' Joe Thomas, who tweeted, "Dear #United, I had to reaccommodate someone once," as we see him taking out somebody on on another team. But this guy, in this case, had to be taken out, Doug, on a stretcher. So this seems to reinforce a view that a lot of people have, that the customer always comes last. Is that unfair, though? Is this so rare, and most of the time the airlines get it right?
Well, most of the time, yes, the airlines do get it right, thanks to the efforts of people like Sara Nelson and the people and all the flight attendants who take care of passengers.
I hear a butt coming.
But in this case, the airline, I think, really needs to look at their procedures, because if you say to a person, okay, they take your money, they give you a ticket, they give you the boarding pass, they let you on their plane, they settle you into your seat, and then they turn around and say, I'm sorry, we have to get you off the seat, not because of anything that you've done, but because we have so mismanaged our business that now we need to have you off the plane so we can get our crew to somewhere else to serve someone else. That is unreasonable. Now, do they have the right to do that? Yes, they do. But is it unreasonable from the passenger's point of view? Yes, it is. And a lot of people might be inclined to say, well, wait a minute, I paid for my ticket. Whatever problems you have, that's your problems, not mine. But no, the airlines say, no, our problem is your problem. And if you don't believe that, we've got the law enforcement to back us up.
Seth, I'm going to get in big trouble with my producer, but I have to ask you this really quickly. So afterwards, there was a leaked memo from the CEO of United Airlines basically saying we did the right thing. But now, if we look at the markets, the airline is down over 2%. If not public reaction, is that likely to get United to change its policy or admit that they might have handled this differently?
Chris, I think it's important.
Seth, I'm sorry, Seth.
Okay, and I think they have to be careful here about, not letting this escalate to a point where there are all kinds of, from their perspective, other unintended consequences. Involuntary denied boardings. I mean, there are people, and Doug has sort of said this, who say, that shouldn't happen. Involuntary denied boardings are a very unfortunate part of a system that, in general, works pretty well for airlines and their customers. If you didn't have that, it's a long story, but basically airline tickets would probably cost a little bit more because airlines couldn't sell as many seats, and it's a supply and demand economics. More seats in the marketplace, being able to sell those extra few seats keeps airfares down just a little bit. So, reasonable people can disagree about all that, but I think they have to sort of contain this and say, this can't happen. The rest of it is a different story, but once that guy's in his seat, no, this cannot happen. And they're causing some other risk to themselves and I think the industry by not handling this better.
Seth, Sara, Doug, thanks to all of you. Appreciate it. And up next, Vladimir Putin.